Hello friends, it's Astro here and welcome back to another tutorial of how to do stuff in the Last Starship. So what I've done is I've created just a very basic ship here in the editor. It is, there's not much going on. It's got a hull, it's got a habitation deck, which is generating sewage for us, and it's got a lovely large open area for people to move about. In addition to that, we've got a reactor, a huge tank to store fuel, and some consumables that we've brought on board. But at the moment, the crew are having to wear spacesuits because we don't have any atmosphere, and we need to get some of that stuff taken care of. Now, I'm going to spawn this stuff in. Normally, you would trade for these things, but to make it simpler, let's go ahead and spawn in the things that we need. So the first thing we're going to need is an oxygen loader. This is where your crew are going to place the oxygen, which is going to then be breathable by your team. What I like to then do is pipe that into a tank, and then that needs to be supplied to an oxygen, an air duct. And what we then need to do is get some pipes and go like this and like that. And then we need some power, so we'll just run that straight down and connect that to the reactor here. So our crew are now going to load oxygen into the oxygen loader. It's going to fill the tank, and then the air duct is going to pump the air out so that these guys will be able to breathe. We can see that in the atmosphere overlay as the oxygen starts to fill the ship up. Now, that's all well and good, but if we fast forward and we let the environment, start to carry on, what we'll do is we'll just spawn in a bunch more crew. And what this additional amount of crew is going to do for us is it's going to start cranking up the carbon dioxide production on board the ship. And you can see the CO2 up here starting to tick upwards as these guys are breathing in the air and breathing out carbon dioxide. This is not good, because beyond a certain point, carbon dioxide is going to kill these people. It's going to suffocate them. So we need to scrub the CO2 out of the atmosphere. And we can do that by spawning in a CO2 scrubber. And the CO2 scrubber can be placed anywhere. I'm going to just plop it there. It needs to be connected to power, but we'll do that in a moment. Usually it's, again, good practice to place in a tank to store and buffer the CO2 that you're pulling out of the atmosphere. And what we then want to do is turn that CO2 back into breathable air. And to do that, we can use an air reprocessor, which is available here. Again, normally you would purchase these from traders out in the world, but we're just going to spawn it in just so that it's quick and easy to show you what needs doing. We're going to need some power for these two pieces of equipment, and we're going to need to connect the CO2 scrubber to the small tank to store the CO2. We're going to need to connect the small tank to the air reprocessor, which is going to then start processing the CO2 back into oxygen. And note now that it says output blocked. That means that we haven't connected the other end of this. So we can just loop that and connect that back up to the oxygen system. Output is no longer blocked. It's going to start filling up this small tank with more oxygen and then feeding it back out for people to breathe. And you'll notice now the CO2 is slowly decreasing. With a crew of this size, or with a passenger complement of this size, you may need more than one CO2 scrubber. The other thing that's going to be useful to work with when you're talking about full life support systems and being as self-sufficient as possible is the habitation deck. And we had a look at that a moment ago, and you can see there's now 820 sewage that is gathering up there with people doing their business, doing what they need to do. In order to deal with that sewage, what we're going to do is spawn in a sewage pipe. Now, don't worry about the fact that this doesn't look like anything at the moment. It's just a purple cube square. That's just because we don't have the texture for that in Alpha 1. It's probably going to come along later on. Again, it's always good practice when you're working with any materials to then put that into a tank. So I'll use a small tank here. And once you've done that, you can then start treating the sewage and using it for whatever purposes you want. So in this case, we're going to use a waste treatment machine, and we're going to place that there. And it takes in sewage and it outputs wastewater. So let's go ahead and connect those components up to begin with. That'll do. And we'll connect the pipes. So sewage comes out of there into the tank, out of the tank and into the waste treatment machine. And then it needs somewhere to send its wastewater. So again, best practice, use a tank. And it doesn't need to be a small one. You could use a big one if you wanted to. And I'm going to put that over here. And once we've got that small tank connected, we then want to treat the wastewater. And we do that with a with a water purifier. And we can plop that there. And we'll connect that up. I'll just connect the power this way on that one. Let's put the pipe out of this one and up and into this small tank. So there's our wastewater being taken care of. We can then also connect that to the water purifier, which will then start purifying that water. And that water we can then send into another small tank, which I'll place here. So what can we do with that water? Well, we can use it. The crew can actually drink that. But the other thing we can do with that wastewater, or that clean water, I should say, is we can then use an oxygen maker. And this oxygen maker takes in water. It consumes some power. And we'll just connect that over like that to get some power. So here we go. Water goes out, goes into that small tank. And then the oxygen maker makes even more oxygen, which we can pipe down and then across, and we can connect that into the oxygen system. Oops, we didn't connect the water to the small tank there. Let's connect that up. Okay, so now all of these systems are functioning. We have oxygen here, we have carbon dioxide being pulled out of the air and then turned into more air. We have sewage coming out of the upper deck and being turned into wastewater. So 10 sewage provides 9 wastewater and compost. The wastewater then gets treated by the water purifier, which then gets turned back into oxygen by the oxygen maker. And that's it. That is the entirety of a fully self-sufficient life support system. At the moment, that's using 45 megawatts to power all of those things. So bear in mind, when you are designing your power system, you will need to manage the power that's required for all of this. And you'll also need to keep an eye on your water, your O2, and your CO2 levels, as well as, let's go to the habitation deck like this, the amount of sewage that you have accumulating upstairs. The other two things that you may need to think about, the first one is, and we'll spawn this in, the first one that you may need to think about is a spacesuit refueling, spacesuit pod. And we can put a couple of those, let's just place them down here. So we'll place these down here. We'll add some pipes in from the oxygen system. And these pods, what's going to happen? These spacesuits inherently can run out of oxygen if people are using them, so they can actually refuel them here, so that they can, continue to operate and run for longer. Finally, the other thing that is very worthwhile thinking about, if you have crew, you should always have enough spacesuits for all of your crew to be able to put them on in case of a hull breach, right? If you get into combat and you take a hit, your crew can be ordered to put their suit, you can put their suits on before you go into combat, and if there is a hull breach, then they'll be okay. But your crew, your passengers, if you're doing passenger-based missions, may not have that luxury. So what's usually a good idea is if I create, let's turn off symmetry because I don't want a wall there. So if I create a little box around this ladder, and this ladder leads upstairs, we're going to confirm that. Let's then add in a door that can go right there. And the next thing we can consider doing is adding another air duct in here behind this ladder. And if we then cable that up and we add some oxygen into that, it means that in the event that this main area is breached, this air duct is still going to be able to supply oxygen to your upper deck and keep any passengers that you have up here alive during your fight, and hopefully long enough for you to either win that fight or spin up your FTL drive and get the Foxtrot out of there. So there you go. That's how to build a fully self-sufficient life support system. Yeah, I hope you found this useful. If you got any questions, drop them below and we can make some more episodes just like this one. Thanks for watching, friends.